Today we're going to compare two of the most popular hybrid cameras you can buy on the market today. That being the Sony A7IV versus the Canon R6 Mark II. I went out for a recent photo shoot and I shot these two cameras side by side, so we're going to be testing it out for photo and for video, so let's just jump right into it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, awesome. Go. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, beautiful.
Now, these two cameras are very similar, so my aim in this video is to find out the differences between the two and also help you guys out if you're not sure to buy the R6 or to go for the Sony A7IV. So make sure you stick around to the end of the video to hear my conclusion. So I haven't had a lot of time with the R6 Mark II. Shout out to DigiDirect Australia for loaning me this camera. While with the Sony A7IV, I've owned this camera for well over 9 months now and is my daily camera for photo and for video. But after shooting with the R6 Mark II, it really does compete for photo and for video against the Sony A7IV.
Yeah, awesome. And then look back towards me.
So both these cameras are $2,500 USD and they're both really good hybrid cameras for both photo and video. But they do have subtle differences. Like the Sony A7IV is a 33 megapixel sensor, while the R6 Mark II is 24.2. Me personally, I would rather have the megapixels on the Sony A7IV. Now both cameras have really good autofocus, really snappy eye autofocus. I did notice on the R6 Mark II that the colors were more dense and also more contrast in the raw image coming out. I don't think it's a massive difference, but I really see why Canon users love shooting on Canon for their Canon colors. So in video, they both have very similar specs. They can both shoot at 10-bit 422 log profiles with S-Log free and C-Log free. They can both shoot 4K 60. A7IV has that 1.5 times crop, while the R6 has a 30-minute record limit on 4K 60. One thing I did notice when shooting on the R6 Mark II is this camera gets so hot compared to the A7IV. That's one thing Canon has always struggled with their R series, especially the R6 and the R5, is overheating. You actually do get an overheating warning and you get a temperature sensor, where the A7IV, I've never had this overheat. I've shot this in the Nevada desert, in Joshua Tree, all through Australia doing weddings where we get 40-degree days, whatever that is in Fahrenheit, and I haven't had any issues with this shutting down or overheating at all. Now there is a bit of a difference in the log profiles. S-Log free, you can pretty much match this up with any Sony camera that can shoot 10-bit 422 S-Log free. So say you own an FX3 or an FX30, A7S free, A1, whatever, you can really match these cameras up very, very similarly. Actually, the FX6 and the FX3 has been approved for Netflix films and documentaries, so it just goes to show that Sony is the king when it comes to video colors. I did like the C-Log free. I just don't think it competes really well with the Sony, and I've actually heard it's a little bit difficult color matching the two cameras between the R6 and the R5. Now another thing to point out is the Sony A7IV has two native ISOs. So that being 800 and 3200. So the noise between 800 and 3200 is very similar. Where on the R6, you only have that one native ISO for log profiles, and that's 800 ISO. So you can see in these demonstrations, I actually ran out of light using the R6 Mark II. I was shooting on the 28-70 f2 wide open, and I had to just raise my ISO knowing that I'm gonna get more noise in my shot. Where with the Sony A7IV, I just bumped it straight up to 3200 ISO, similar noise to 800 ISO, and plenty of light to keep shooting. Now, the main difference for us content creators, us hybrid shooters, photo and video, is the Ibis. The Ibis is really great in both of these cameras for photo, but video is where the R6 starts to fall apart. If you're using the Ibis on wider lenses, you get this hideous wobble in the corners, where compared to the Sony, you actually get really good in-body stabilization, and they also have post-stabilization with catalyst brows. The biggest difference between these two cameras is that you have to buy RF glass for the Canon R6 Mark II, and Canon is the only one making RF glass. They have not opened up their system like what Fuji and Sony have done. So basically Sigma and Tamron and Samyang have been making really amazing lenses for a third of the price that Sony made. Sony lenses are amazing, but for someone like myself, I love the quality that Sigma lenses produce, and they have a lot of different lenses. Like I was shooting on the 24-70 2.8, and I've compared that to the Sony 24-70, and it has a very similar image quality, autofocus, and sharpness. Where on the Canon system, if you want to go out and buy a 24-70 2.8 RF for this, it's going to cost you the same amount as the camera, where the Sigma version is only $900 USD. So there's just way more lens options for the Sony system. I'd just like to shout out to DigiDirect Australia. If you are in Australia and you want to buy a new camera, or even just walk in and just test out a camera, I highly recommend you check out Digi Australia and actually get that in-store experience rather than guessing online. I'd also like to make a shout out to CARLO for helping shooting this video and doing the BTS, and our amazing model Lisa. You're awesome, you did great. In conclusion, both cameras are amazing for photo. The Sony has more megapixels while the Canon has a slight edge on autofocus. For video, the clear winner is the Sony with their Slog free, their post-stabilization, and their dual native ISOs. Bit of a minus of point with the 4K 60 crop compared to the R6, and I'm confident that most cinematographers and filmmakers would agree that Sony make better video cameras, and a lot of photographers would also agree that Canon actually make better photography cameras. The difference between photo is very minimal, where the difference between video is a massive gap. So that's it for today's video. Make sure you leave a comment down below if you're more a Sony fan, or you're more of a Canon fan, or if you just don't know which camera to buy. I hope this video helped you guys out, and we'll see you next time.